Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teeth Matter. I'm your host, Ellie Halabian, DDS, and today we're chatting with Dr. Charlie Cage. Dr. Charlie Cage is actually an active military officer, which is one of the first we've had on the episode. We talk about what it means to be a part of the Navy, how that's helped her in her dental career. We talk about finding hobbies, what's that road to self-discovery look like, what it means to take care of yourself in dentistry, and so many other things. It's such a candid conversation, a vulnerable conversation, and I hope you enjoy this one. Before we dive in, did you know that we're getting ready to launch Teeth Matter Hangouts? It's an exclusive online membership community that gives you access to monthly meetups, 24/7 online support, plus exclusive membership perks when it comes to career development and professional development courses. So if you're interested, feel free to DM us on Instagram or email us at info@teethmatterpod, as in podcast.com. Dr. Charlie Cage, welcome, my friend. Welcome to Teeth Matter.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm very excited. I'm so interested into getting to know more about you. I want to learn so much from you. I know you've been practicing for quite some time. You preach a lot about self-care, and there's so much going on in your life. So we're gonna learn more about you today. So let's start with, how did your career in dentistry start? Where did you go to dental school, and where did you initially start out in your career?
So I'll start off as early as probably 8 years old. I thought I wanted to be a vet at one point. It turns out I'm allergic to cats, so that would not be a very good career choice. But, I grew up in the Caribbean and I didn't have a lot of family members who even went to college, right? So that was like a whole different ballgame. But luckily, out of the three of my siblings, both of the others are French, and I was the only American. So I was blessed to have the opportunity to be able to study in America. So when I was 14, I moved to the United States, and then I started to figure out, what I wanted to do with my life, And so eventually I went to a dentist, and then he was kind enough to ask me what I wanted to do with my life. And I said, I want to be some kind of doctor, but I eliminated vet, of course. And he said, why don't you become a dentist? And I was like, this is very, very interesting. And so I think that's what really started me off on my journey, to become a dentist, because I like the aspect of, yes, you're a doctor, right? But you also have this creative art side of dentistry, which even to this day, I feel like it's so inspiring and it just keeps me going, so excited to be a dentist. So yeah, it was a very long journey because, I graduated from UNMC in Nebraska back in 2012. And that's where I joined the Navy. And later on, I ended up specializing in operative dentistry. So I spent about 3 years, just learning more about dentistry. But I love it. I love what I do. And now I run a branch health clinic. And there's no looking back from there. It's just it's a very, with all the hardships and whatnot. I think it's a great career to be in, and I've learned how to navigate around the struggles.
And there's lots of them, but it's so amazing, your story, because no, you've gone through a lot, and you mentioned going into the Navy. I was wondering, did you enroll in the Navy before dental school, or was this an after?
Yeah, so I tried to join the Navy when I was in high school, but because when I was a senior, I was only 16, I still couldn't enlist, and my parents were like, absolutely not. So I ended up going to college. I spent 4 years there, then went to dental school, and that's when the opportunity came up again. So during my first
Okay.
year of dental school, a recruiter came by, and sure enough, I had another Navy scholarship co-resident, and he was like, "Yeah, you should absolutely join." And so I joined after my freshman year of dental school.
Oh, interesting. I didn't
Hmm.
know that you can enroll in school. I thought it was something that you had to do prior to. A lot of
No.
people don't really have information when it comes to that. Like, what does being part of the Navy or being an active military officer mean to you, or and how did that help you with your career?
Yeah, so there are a lot of ways to join the military as a dentist. So I always say if you have any questions, reach out to somebody who's in or who served before, and they can tell you like some top secret ways to get in. But there are different ways that you can get in, whether it's a scholarship or the collegiate program, and that's the one that I did. So it's a little bit different. It wasn't the scholarship program. I They didn't, pay for my dental school. I used the GI Bill to pay for dental school. So during dental school, I was actually active duty, which is a little bit strange. So since I was active duty, those years actually counted towards retirement, which is great. So I get to retire a little bit earlier. But I used my GI Bill to pay for my school and then the loans that I had from undergrad. And the first year of dental school, I
Mm-hmm.
did the 10-year payback. So after 10 years of serving, you don't necessarily have to be serving the military to do it. You can do public service as well to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
But my loans were forgiven after that. But reach out to somebody who's in the service and see, get all your questions answered. But I joined. You can join before, you can join during, and you can join after dental school as a director session. So different ways to do it, but I'm happy I did it because I had no idea where I wanted to practice. So I got to travel, go to different states, get to experience different things, different clinics. I think it was a very valuable way for me to learn how I wanted to practice, but also
Mm-hmm.
learn the dynamics of how to run and function in a dental clinic. Because every
Mm-hmm.
3 years, I would move and you would end up in a different clinic with different people, different personalities. So you learn really quickly the dynamics of a dental team, which I think is really important to have. So there's a lot of learning. And I would say the first 4 or 5 years, it was just that struggle bus. And it's like, eventually you learn how to make things smooth, more predictable, um, and how you will respond through different challenges.
It's funny you said that after that you said it's after 4 or 5 years you get used to it. A friend of mine told me the same thing. She's like, Ellie, like the first couple of years of your career, you're gonna have that high anxiety. You're gonna
Yes.
be stressed going to work. You're gonna be worried about the procedure, the crown prep, this, that.
Yes.
And then they're gonna reach a point in time where it's like you don't care anymore. You're just
Yeah.
going to work. It's just a job.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wanna know, like, for you, what point was that transition, and like how did you do anything to help you get there, or was it just a matter of time?
So I mentor a lot of, first years. I was the PGY1 director for AGD. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of new dentists, I get to mentor them. And I think I notice more so in female dentists who are very empathetic. So the
Mm-hmm.
empaths that are listening, um, those are the ones who struggle the most, right? Because we're so concerned about others,
Mm-hmm.
about their lives, about their struggles, how we affect them, right? And then we take everyone's burdens and we put it on ourselves, which it can lead to burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very debilitating for us empaths. So I noticed that a lot in first year female dentists the most, and even more so in minorities. Okay. We have now entered into a male dominated field, and I say minorities because at least for me, where I was growing up, it's different, right? And so you come into America and you try not to be too different. You try to assimilate to your culture, the new environment. So it can be really difficult for us to go into a male dominated field and to assert ourselves. We try to be the friend, which when you're the dentist or running a clinic, you can't necessarily be the friend, right? We
Right.
have to be able to say, nope, I need this done this way. Actually, I understand why you want this, but this is not how it's going to be done. Like it's your clinic at that point, and it can be really difficult to go up to like a dental assistant who's probably female, who's probably older, doing it
Mm-hmm.
longer than you've probably been, practicing dentistry,
Right.
to be able to say, I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but this is wrong. It can be really difficult for us to implement those changes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I always say, I learned the hard way most of the time. But once I've learned it, I never forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like one of my responsibility is to help the first year dentist, second year dentist to say, this is my experience, right? This is how you can avoid sticky situations. And my hope is just to make sure they don't have to learn the difficult way that I learned. And hopefully, they take a different path. So I have one dear friend of mine that I mentor. She's the same way, where she's empathetic. She will not take breaks to drink water, to go to the bathroom. And she's like constantly worried about her patients, which is great, right? We want dentists to be that way for their patients, but never at the cost of their mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always saying there's a balance, and then that drive to be successful, like the people that we see on social media, to know that it comes with time. It's not going to happen instantly. So she's about to finish her second year of, being a full blown dentist. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always reminding her, it takes time. I'm still
Yeah.
learning. I've been doing it for 11 years and I'm still learning. We're on a journey, and there should really never be a point in time where you're like, oh yeah, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did it, right? It should
Right.
always be, wow, I still have a lot to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say it took that, 4 or 5 years for me to say, to give myself grace and to say, yes, I still have a lot to learn, but I'm okay with where I am right now, without
Mm-hmm.
feeling that negative like burden of saying, oh my God, I need to do this, is that stress that can slowly kill you over time. And I don't by any means say that lightly, is because that 4 or 5 years that I was struggling, learning how to be a better dentist, a better adult, I had a lot of stress and ended up getting quite sick and being diagnosed with chronic pain syndrome, fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I would never wish on anyone, which is why I changed my platform, as you mentioned earlier, to be more self care and wellness, instead of just like, hey, I'm a dentist, but to be on a bigger scope of things, because I understand how difficult our field can be. And
Mm-hmm.
I want everyone else to enjoy it the way that I'm now enjoying it, without having to deal with chronic issues, outside of the back and neck pain that we have to deal
Right.
with. But to feel mentally strong, and to feel that joy that I'm now starting to feel, if I can
Mm-hmm.
help even one person avoid it, I think I would be happy with that.
You know, you were talking and I was like thinking about, you're right, it's like crippling. You were talking about this girl that you mentor, this other
Mhm.
professional that you mentor. And it was
Yes.
like, it's not so much I have this anxiety too, but I also find that it kills my confidence. But then you
Yes.
added a layer of like, it led to chronic back pain. It
Hmm.
led to chronic body pain. Like
Yes.
now that's taking a toll on your physical health where you can't physically do the work that you need to do or
Hmm.
be of service to someone. So when this happened to you, what were some changes that you made in your life?
I wish it would have been a quick change, but again, nothing worth doing in life happens quickly.
Mm,
So it took a few years for me to even realize that I was responsible for my well being. It was strange, because I had this idea that I should always be helping others, and
mm,
if I looked towards myself, that I was being selfish. In reality, if I took better care of myself, I could in turn take better care of others. It was very difficult for me to understand that concept, and one I still struggle with even to this day. But I'm getting better at it. And I've set reminders in place to be like, oh, nah, you don't have to think this way. We're fine. And same thing with being in survival mode, because I came to the States. I was pretty much by myself, had to pave myself through, through school and all this stuff. I was in survival mode for so many years that once I became a dentist and had the income, I still didn't know how to shut that off. I was still like saying I had to do all these things to make ends meet. In reality, it was just my survival mode saying, oh no, we have to do all this stuff, causing a lot of internal anxiety. So it
Right.
took a few years for me to be able to say, turn off the survival mode, that we're okay, we're safe. And then to also be okay with being who I am. Because you join the military, and if you think of a military officer, you have a very distinct idea of what they should look like, how they should speak, how they should behave. And for the longest, you couldn't even get a hint of me having an accent because I
Interesting.
wanted to be the same, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I started to lose myself. I lost my accent. I lost the things that I like to do that was different than other people. Um, and all of a sudden, you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, who is this person?
Yeah.
You've lost yourself,
A
right?
lot of role playing.
A lot of playing. And even when I started to talk about dentistry, then imposter syndrome showed up as well, right? It took a lot to realize that, to kind of reconnect to who I am and say, well, what is it that I like to do? And, try to rediscover who I am and disassociate the things that I used to do that was, oh no, you're just doing this so that you can blend in, right? Because you're a military officer, right? Instead of
Yeah.
saying, well, no, my accent is coming back as I start to reconnect more so with my family from back home. Um, I'm not bothered so much when people say, "Oh, you say this weird," right? "Oh, where are you from?" It's just like it's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be myself. But my whole thing was, if I were to look at myself in the mirror and know and understand that not everyone was going to like you, right? Do you want that person to not like you for who you are or for the person you're pretending to be?
Interesting
And
way of
that,
putting it.
that was it for me. So
Yeah.
I understand I will not be liked by everyone, but the ones that will not like me for who I am, and the ones who like me will like me for who I truly am. So it's a long road. It's a journey, as I always say. But you just take it day by day or week by week, and you keep track, whether that's through journaling, or for me, I like videography. So that's my visual journaling, to just see how far you've come. And looking back at like my old videos and whatnot, I'm really able to see my growth. And is that documentation that's really important. So there's a book by Austin Kleon that I always talk about, that it's titled Show Your Work, and it can pertain to your personal life. It can pertain to your dentistry. Because I always say, my very first composite restoration, I probably thought I did like the most amazing work, right? I should have taken a picture
Yeah.
of it. But now that I document my work, I'm able to see, oh, wow, like you really did that marginal ridge, crisp. But
Right.
if you don't have that documentation, you quickly forget where you were. And to be able to see where you are now and see that growth, that can really help inspire you to keep learning, to keep improving, and then to say that you're not stagnant and you're actually growing as a person. So it takes a while, but I think documenting my life and being able to see how far I've come, I really played a role in my self-discovery and in my own happiness.
It's interesting because I've been trying that out myself, like doing things that pique my interest and kind
Yes.
of on this journey of self-discovery. I want to know for you, what were some things that you were like, you know what? I want to pursue this. Like, I've never done this before because it would be really intimidating. Like, if you don't know anything about a subject and you want to try an activity alone, like, a lot of people don't have enough confidence or courage or interest to do it
Yes.
by themselves. So, what was something that you were like, this is something that I think could be for me?
So if you, I have to ask, like, I ask my friends all the time, how many hobbies do you have?
Yeah.
Because at one point I thought there was something wrong with me because there are so many interests that I had. I like
Hmm.
painting, I like drawing, I like building, like construction with homes. Um, there's so many things I like doing. And at one point I would feel almost paralyzed because I didn't know what to pick. And I didn't
Hmm.
want to start something and then be judged for it. Is that fear of, judgment and failure as well? Because we don't want to fail. And so even when I was doing residency, I was teaching first, dental students. Um, and their biggest anxiety was failing at something
Hmm.
that's really supposed to be art form, right? And even more so with hobbies, like there's no judgment on it. In dentistry, there's still a little bit of restriction, and we have to follow certain anatomy, certain principles that have to be respected. But hobby wise, it's completely, you can do whatever you want. Um, and so it was like, I didn't want to be judged by other people. But once I understood that I could have these hobbies and not necessarily share it with anyone, because I'm talking about videography, taking pictures, you don't have to share it. You don't have to post it on Instagram or Facebook. You can keep it for your own personal record, your own personal
Hmm.
journey. But I always say just dive in because everyone started somewhere. And you can't expect yourself to just be a master, immediately. It's understanding that progress, and that progress comes with repetition and doing things over and over, and then training your eye on what you think is beautiful. And
Hmm.
the whole concept of, having hobbies is not to create a masterpiece, is to find something that's beautiful to your own eyes, to your own perception of what beauty is. But if you decide to share it, is also understanding not everyone will find that to be beautiful, but it's to find that small group of people who connect with it and find your tribe with that. Um, is that whole concept of knowing you will not, jive with everyone. It's just
Hmm.
the point of finding your tribe. And so
Right.
even with my friends now, I create certain things and they'll say, oh, well, it's fine. And I'm like, it's okay if you don't like it. It's okay. But I really like it. Like, I really love it. I'm proud of what it is that internal gratification, not looking necessarily to anyone else. But if you find somebody else who loves it too, then it does give you a boost. But there are often times that I would, a few years back, I would do something and a lot of people will say, that's amazing. Like, how did you do that?
Hmm.
But internally, I couldn't find beauty in it. And
Right.
it wouldn't matter how many people said it was good if I didn't feel that. And so it took a few years for me to say, for me to find and appreciate my own perception of beauty and art and
Hmm.
having that internal happiness. It takes a while, but once you start with it, it's like an avalanche. Like all of a sudden it's you keep getting bigger and bigger, and then your ability to respond and to give yourself that little boost, that little happiness, even though no one else agrees with it and you're like, I think it's really nice. That eventually gets bigger and easier to do over time. But I wish we could just like snap our fingers and say, wow, like, yeah, I'm fixed. Like, but it doesn't happen like that. But one day you'll wake up and you will surprise yourself and say, well, wow, I'm no longer thinking this negative way anymore. You've transformed your mind into thinking more positively. And then again, that encourages you to keep thinking that way and encourage others as well. So I always say, like on my Instagram, I post a lot of wellness, self-love stuff. And it's not because I feel like I'm this guru on wellness. I always say I struggle, if not every day, to continue with that mindset. But it encourages me. It's my own personal reminder to keep it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to also encourage other people to find my tribe of people that we can kind of feed off of each other, to give each other reminders, to just continue on that path of wellness and happiness.
Yesterday I actually took a course in pottery for the first time, and I was so excited. Something I wanted to do forever, and it was wheel throwing. So it's like, like the scene from Ghost where you're like
Oh, yes.
sculpting, wheel throwing, the sculpting, the clay, messy, muddy. And one, as dentists, we're trained to be perfect. So we're not
Mhm.
used to like messiness. And two, we want to create something that's beautiful. Like on the first try, I want, like, we tend to go for like, let's create a masterpiece.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Ellie, just take your time to just have fun. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to create anything. If it's a blob, who cares? Just play with the material. Just get used to
Yeah.
feeling the clay and getting used to like the way of the wheel and the pedal and all that stuff, because that in itself, it takes time to get used to, right? But it was
Mhm.
such a challenge for me sitting there. It was like nobody knew what was going on in my head. I'm like watching other people create, and then people are being really meticulous and perfect, and it's like their
Yeah.
second or third class. And I was like, stop looking at other people. And it was even funny, like the teacher would come around and look at me. She'd be like, you can't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. Like you can't, that's fine. All right. She's like, you need another piece of clay. You need another. And I was like, okay. And then
Okay.
usually I would take that, like, it would be like, imagine like an instructor telling you that's not nice or
Yeah.
you need
Yeah.
to start over. That would, you would take it as an insult. But I
Yeah.
was like, Ellie, calm down.
Yes.
Just enjoy, just
Yeah.
play, just experience. And I think we don't give ourselves that grace or
No.
the opportunity to try things in a fun way.
Yes.
And we lose fun and we lose joy in our lives so much. And it's very sad. And I feel like a lot of dentists that I talk to share that sentiment. And
Yes.
I love seeing your page because you bring that joy back. You bring that softness back. And yeah, it's so nice to see. I just
Oh,
had to
that
share
means a
that
lot.
because what you were
Thank you.
saying, basically, it just resonated. I was like, I had that yesterday. Like it
Yeah.
happened to me yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So along the same lines of, the hobbies, I wanted to get into painting. And so I was talking to my husband and I said, should I do acrylic? Like, what kind of painting should I do? He told me I should do watercolor, which is like the most unpredictable paint outside of the lines.
Yeah.
It's just like the most imperfect way of art that is still so beautiful in itself. But he was like, you need to let the paint go outside of the lines and, let it bleed, let it mix up messy.
Mhm.
He's like, just, this is the painting you're going to do. And I was just like, but it's so hard. It's
Is your
so
husband an
hard.
artist?
He's artistic. I think he's just like me. He have multiple
Yeah.
hobbies, but he's always, he's my biggest supporter, honestly. But he was just like, you're going to do watercolor and you're going to see how it is. So like now we go out to the park and we get the kids involved too, and we're all just watercoloring at the park, messy
Oh,
as
that's
it is.
beautiful.
It's it's my imperfectly perfect way of painting. I think in this creative space, especially for professionals like us, it can be difficult to feel empowered to go outside of the grain and to do things outside of our profession. All of a sudden, you're done so much with dental school, and now you have a little bit of free time and you can relax and breathe, and you're like, well, what do I like doing? So it's
Mhm.
important to find someone, whoever it is, um, to be able to encourage you to feel inspired and to do something new, instead of just, our normal routine. And so even recently I started doing jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and found a good bunch of ladies who know absolutely nothing about dentistry or even about the Navy. But to
Mm-hmm.
be able to connect with people who have a different passion, I think is it's really important to find someone, that can
Mm-hmm.
disconnect you from that normal frame of mind that you would have, to kind of connect you to something new, something different, that can just
Right.
be like mind blowing. Like, I never thought I would like this, but somebody could
Right.
say, well, you didn't do this perfectly, right? Or you didn't throw this clay on here properly, but keep going, right? It would be your
Right.
cheerleader to tell you to keep going, and eventually you create your own art, your own way of doing things.
That's amazing that you're doing this for you, for your body also. It's good
Mhm.
movement.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, very good movement. Tough, but great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how do you find the time to all this, to do all this? Because like you're also a mom of two
Yes.
little ones,
Yeah.
and you have a partner, and you have your own practice, and
Yes.
you are a mentor, and you are creating content. Like,
Yeah.
when do you stop? When do
I
you
don't
take
I
a
don't
breath?
sleep. I don't sleep. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I actually
I
require
believe you if you didn't, to be honest.
I actually require a lot of sleep. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um but I try my best to use my time as best as possible.
Mhm.
One thing I had to do is to incorporate breaks during my normal workday,
Mhm.
because I would work like 9, 10 hour days, just constantly going. That leads to burnout, of course, but eventually you start working less efficiently. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, yes, it's might be 9, 10 hours, but probably 3 hours worth of proper work. So I started to create blocks in the way that I do things. Like, here's a block for checking emails. You only have a certain amount of time. So I find myself moving a lot faster with responding to emails. I do all the lab work that I do myself. So I do a lot of cosmetic work. I do all the lab work myself. Again, I set time limits for that. But I also incorporated breaks where I just check out. So I give myself
Mhm.
15, half an hour break from to just sit down and recharge. But I
Mhm.
also, during lunchtime, I know I'm not actually doing dentistry work, but that's my time for, say, content creation, right? So I started to create more blocks in my day like that. So I find myself more productive. Um, and so even like after work, I'll also spend like another half an hour just coming up with certain ideas or plan a checklist for what I will do the next coming days.
Mhm.
Because I know when I come home, that's a block. That's kid time, right? And then there's husband time, and then jujitsu time. So I create certain blocks like that, and sometimes it's it's really just having that time limitation, knowing that
Mhm.
I only have this time to do it. You allow yourself to be more efficient with the way that you do your work. It's more intentional, so I
Mhm.
find myself, moving through a lot faster doing it that way. But I also give myself a lot of grace. I think that's a common thing, or theme, to say you give yourself grace to know, yeah, I might have needed to come up with, a real idea today, but I didn't come up with it, to be able to say it's okay. Because in reality, even though it's nice to be able to make income off of my social media, that was never the intentional goal of it. It's to connect
Mhm.
with other people, it's to share your message. um, so it's that reminder of why you started doing this, to say
Mhm.
it's not really a job, right? I'm still a
Right.
dentist and I have that income from it. It's more so it's that message. And so if you can't get that message out today, it's okay, we'll get it out tomorrow.
Yeah. Right.
um, but the most important thing is to is to that self-care. you know, is to spend that time that you need, because once you recharge yourself, you can really give a lot more to other people. But as soon as you start always just, withdrawing from your internal bank, there's just nothing. And then it actually takes
Mm-hmm.
more time for you to recharge because you've been depleted to absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
but spending daily, time to give yourself a boost, I think is really important to create, to find more time to do things. It can be a really slippery slope sometimes, right? You always have to maintain that balance. But I think as soon as I realize that I can do a lot more and
Mm-hmm.
be better at the things that I do when I take a break, you're just like, what? Um, it Life is just better that way, you know?
What do you have a moment in time where you realize, like, oh, when I give myself time to heal, like
Yes.
it spills over into something else? Like, what was an example for you?
100%. I would have to say it's more so my life at home,
Mm-hmm.
because of the kids. They're very young, so they require a lot of energy. But, I would work, 10 hours a day. I would come home just stressed, because I gave
Yeah.
work my all. And I come home and I'm like, I have nothing to give you. I have nothing to give you, children, and my husband. I have nothing. And, they feed off of that vibe of,
Mm-hmm.
void. There's nothing there. And then I come home and I'm like, okay, still need to help. I still need to do this. And then I come home and I'm looking at my husband like, just don't even look at me. I can't even talk to you right now. And then, eventually it's just that, oh, mom's always stressed. Mom's always tired. It's
Mm-hmm.
never good. And then once I start to give myself breaks throughout the workday, um, I spend, my drive home listening to podcasts that are inspiring, that are building me up, recharging
Mm-hmm.
me, right? Or sometimes I listen to nothing at all, just letting my mind be blank. And then I come home and all of a sudden I have energy. I have, more time, that capacity to have fun with them.
Mm-hmm.
That can be like, oh yeah, mom's energetic today. Like, what can we do? And even with that, I find my husband also being more happy
Mm-hmm.
and helping out even more than when I was stressed, which is weird, right? Because you think that because I have more to give, that I have to give all of it. In
Right.
reality, it almost, that energy like affects them, and
Mm-hmm.
they give me more, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it always starts with within. It starts with
Mm-hmm.
myself, to say that I need to not deplete myself down to zero, give myself the time and the relaxation, massages, whatever it is that
Mm-hmm.
I need, so that I can be a better person. And in turn, I feel like with that positive mindset, my husband's a better husband. My
Mm-hmm.
children, are better children. My patients are better patients.
Yeah.
So it was mind blowing to realize that my own mindset on things changes everyone around
Right.
me. And then as
Yeah.
soon as, that switches, you're like, wait, everything's falling apart. And it's like, no, it's actually not. Because
Mm.
if internally you're strong, everyone else around you will be too.
What is one thing that you do regularly to make sure that you're giving yourself that time or you're getting what you need to give that energy back? What is like
Yeah.
one
So,
part of your routine?
um, I always say I have a routine, but my routine is always that my routine changes. it's it's strange, because there's so much that kind of happens with my life. There's a lot of, military life. It's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
I move every 3 years at least. It's a lot of changes, but I always try to be exciting with my routine. I think the one thing that's probably remained constant is my coffee time. like that's
Yeah.
my thing. And
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee. I know, right? It's the
Yeah.
best. And I don't drink coffee for the energy. I mean, my
Oh,
coffee is mostly creamer, really. It's not,
oh, I'm the same.
yeah, it's not a lot of coffee, but is that I'm with my coffee. I take a deep breath and I enjoy it. Because
Mm,
if it's hot, I want to drink it when it's hot. And if it's ice cold, I want to drink it when it's not diluted from the melted ice, right? So it's my time to take a deep breath and just like enjoy this cup of coffee. I think that's probably my most constant. But like my normal routine of how I take care of me, I think changes a lot, which I
mhm.
think is good because sometimes that normal, if you do the same routine every single time, that in itself can, you lose your inspiration that way. Um, but I
Yeah.
think coffee is is my constant, but the coffee in itself changes. Or I guess the drink. Because sometimes it's coffee, hot coffee, sometimes it's iced coffee, sometimes it's matcha, sometimes it's tea. But it's that time with my drink
Yes.
is really important. And then the other one is the bedtime routine with the kids. Um, that the variable with that, but it's always we end the day with a song. And so I have to do, because there are two of them, so I have to sing the same song twice. But we cuddle up, and that's their me and me and mommy time where I snuggle up with them and I sing them a song. And even
Mm.
sometimes I lose my voice, it's still like a hum, like, hey babe, I can't sing for you, but I'm going to hum something instead. um, I think those are really important to do something in the morning, to anchor yourself, and to do something in the evening where you kind of self reflect on the day. You look at your failures, say, okay, man, wasn't so great, but this is how I'll do it next time. And also recognize the wins of the day is really
Mm.
important, and then see how you can translate that into the next day. One thing, even though my son is only 6 years old, I don't know where he got it from, but I'm so proud of him that at the dinner table, like sometimes he'll ask, what was your best part about today?
That's cute.
Isn't it? And I
Yeah.
was just like,
Very innocent and sweet.
but is that, I always say, if you don't have children, go hang out with a kid. Just go hang out with a kid. And even like as a parent, sometimes we get caught up with the responsibility of being a parent. So if you just disconnect yourself with being the parent and you just go hang out with the kid and see how they think about things, you can get so inspired and like heal that inner child of yourself to be like, oh man, why didn't I do that? Oh, why didn't I just sit this weird way instead of, always sitting proper?
Yeah.
Why didn't I just do this very strange thing? Why don't I eat my spaghetti with a spoon? I don't know, just to do something different.
Yeah.
I think their children are reminders to kind of reconnect to that, innocent, inspiring
Mm.
version of ourselves. Because I think as adults, we kind of grow to be dull and afraid to
Yeah.
try things. Kids will remind you.
I think you make a great point. I've noticed that too, that when I don't have kids myself, but I have a big family and there's lots of kids in this family. And
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time with my cousins, their children. And you're right. Like kids are so innocent. They don't see no bounds. There's no limitations. They don't know any better.
No.
So everything is a free for all.
Yeah.
And like you said, as we get older, we get dulled because society socializes us to learn how
Yes.
to be a certain way, act a certain way, like a certain thing. And it loses its beauty in a sense because everything is just
Hmm.
so, it's thought out for you, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
But as a kid, you see them and they act silly and goofy and they're laughing and they're rolling around and you're like, God, that's beautiful. And I love
Isn't
that
it?
you have that and that you make sure to take away that parent role to kind of have that fun with your kids.
Yeah.
But even though you have this fun, even though you make the time, you did mention failures just a little while ago. And so I have to ask you, like, after this many years of, professional work, this many years of service, this many years of experience, and obviously, like the learning and knowledge of self care, you still
Mhm.
probably experience or struggle with certain things in dentistry.
Oh, yes.
What is it? What is it that you struggle with right now?
For dentistry or my personal life?
Well, you bring up two very good points. What is it that you struggle with dentistry
With
right now?
dentistry. Um, so failure, I'll start off with failure is something that I think I've always tried to avoid. And there was one point in time I had to realize that if you're not failing, you're not doing
Mm,
anything. That means you're not being adventurous, you're not experimenting, you're not growing as a person, right? Um, and so for a few years of doing dentistry, I stayed in my comfort zone, which was like direct restorations, because that was my thing. I felt good with it. There's no chance of failure there, right?
mm,
Um, but there's a cap to that. So you can try to say, oh, well, I've mastered, my time. I'm really fast, or I have no voids, or my anatomy is absolutely beautiful. There's still a limitation with that. And so all of a sudden, after years of doing what I'm good at, with,
mm,
very low risk of failure, you start losing that spark, right? You're just doing the same old, same old. I wanted to start to dive into doing aesthetic work, but I was afraid of failure. Well, you either jump into that area and you risk failure, or you stay where you are and you never grow.
mm,
So I start to dive in. I look for mentors, but there are situations where I have no mentor. And so I have to go to, do I say YouTube University, right? For me to
it's a
learn.
real thing.
There's lots of great information on there. Um, and so I'd ask certain people, it basically would give me inspiration so I know what questions to ask other people.
Hmm.
Um, but you dive in. And so I would say to my patients, hey, I think you'd be a great candidate for this. Or they'll say, hey, can I do this? And I would just be honest with them,
Hmm.
right? I'm not going to paint myself as the expert on veneers when I first started. And it was like, yeah, we can do this for you. Um, and I guess luckily in the military, there's no cost to the work that we do. And I would say, yeah, I'll do this. We'll do it in the most conservative way. And if you don't like it, then we'll take it out. Right. So I
Hmm.
started off with not doing full mouth rehabs, but things like peg laterals or diastema
Hmm.
closure where it's reversible. Right. But I dive in and I'll say, hey, I've never done it before, but we can give it a go. And
Hmm.
surprisingly, everyone appreciated that honesty and was like, all right, let's do it. You know,
Yeah.
you let them know the risk benefits and what you're willing to do to, to accomplish the goal. But I had to understand that there's a risk of failure. The patient understood, and then just go from there. It's like if I
Hmm.
fail, I learn from it. And if I didn't fail, then that means I need to take it a step up, right? But that's really the only way to grow, because in reality, if you fail and other people see it, they almost see you as more human and more
Hmm.
relatable. Um, I think that was hard, and sometimes it's hard for me to even translate that on my page, is because I never want to be perceived as somebody who tries to be perfect. I
Hmm.
want everyone, as embarrassing as it is, I want everyone to see my failure, because I'm not perfect. And I think it's easier for me to, even myself, to relate to other people that I see failing on Instagram, instead of trying to have this very, perfect illusion of what they think life is. And we all know that's not reality.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I fail every day and it sucks. but it's good.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot today. We've talked about, where you started, your family, your partner, self-exploration.
Yeah.
Um, the last thing I'm going to ask you is, what is one thing that you would, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who's starting out in their career?
Yeah. I would say the best piece of advice I would give to somebody, and I always look to like the person that's like the younger version of me, is to know that it's okay. It's okay. Um, yeah, the dentistry or whatever restoration that you did wasn't perfect, right? Textbook version. It's okay. Was it sealed? If not, just redo it. It's okay. Um, your dentistry doesn't define who you are as a person. It doesn't. And as soon as we start taking better care of ourselves, our personal life, our dentistry, the way that we communicate with people, whether that's our dental team, our patients, our friends, our loved ones, all that will improve. But this is now their time to start their self-discovery process, because the last how many years we've spent working so hard to go through undergrad and then to go through dental school, and then whoever decided to do postgraduate education, they could have easily lost themselves. And now is their time to rediscover who they are, right? Even if they had a lot of self-care, wellness throughout that, they have now entered into a new chapter of their lives, and they need to dive in. And so you can either do that by yourself through failures, right? Trying new things, different hobbies. But I always say never be ashamed to talk to a professional, right? Because even after I had my second child, and that was during COVID, we set up marriage counseling to just say, it's just like, is anything wrong? We're like, nope, just entering a new chapter of our lives. We have a second kid. I'm in residency, and this is COVID, right? Said these are challenges, and we just want to make sure that we're able to communicate clearly with how we're feeling, because I feel like we have a lot of emotions and I don't know how to really explain it.
Right.
So always look for somebody, and it may not be the first therapist that you talk to, might not be the perfect match. It's okay. So find a friend or a therapist to talk to so you can express how you feel about things, but then look to a mentor. Um, I think that's why I feel so passionate about what I do. And I mentor a lot of people in the military, but I also mentor people that's outside of the military. And sometimes we do it through just phone calls or just texting, or doing it through a web call, a video call. But um, I think it's really important to find a mentor, because dentistry in itself can be very lonely, very isolating, especially if you have your own private practice, or if there's a very big age gap between the new dentist and then the person that you started the practice with. Um, Having that mentorship is really important to know what things you can improve in, what you should be worried about, what is actually clinically relevant. I think those are really important, to find somebody that you can confide in, and kind of help you navigate through dentistry. But we have different aspects in our lives, and a lot of things kind of overlap. But I think it's really important to have that foundation of us first, right? Because I don't know how your dental class was, but I would have the person who's like the worst dental student, but they would be the happiest person, the happiest person, just living their lives. And
Yeah.
here I am, like nitpicking about every single thing and just being so stressed out and unhappy. If we
Right.
could just kind of go towards the middle, where we know where we're still doing good work, but also feel happy with the things that we do, both in dentistry and our personal lives, I think is really important. So having balance.
That was really beautifully said. Truly. Dr. Charlie, if someone wanted to connect with you, where can they find you? What are your outlets?
Yes, I'm mostly on Instagram. I post more about my life there and a lot about wellness and self care. I actually just started a new YouTube page. It's just Charlie Cage. It's more of a video documentary. I'm slowly learning how to tell my own story through video. So it's a work in progress. But you can find me on Instagram, send me an email, which is also on my Instagram page. But I'm always happy to help others, whether that's in dentistry or their personal lives when it comes to self care. But I like to find my tribe of people who's like, hey, let's live a happy life because we only have one,
Oh, you have one.
as far as we know.
Yeah. Dr. Charlie Cage, thanks so much for being on Teeth Matter. Thanks so much for sharing about you, your life, your journey. I really enjoyed learning about you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate connecting with you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow our podcast, write a review, leave a comment. Anything you share with us goes a long way. And if you think a friend will appreciate this podcast, then make sure you share it with them too. Until next time, cheers.